Point Pleasant, West Virginia, November 15th, 1965. Two couples, out for an evening joyride. As they pass the abandoned North Power Plant, they witness something that averts their attention. In their headlights, a set of glowing red eyes glare back at them. Out of the corner of their eyes, they notice a source of light. A shadowy, man-like figure with large wings seemingly struggling to keep its balance on the side of the road.
What the hell is that?
As the car speeds along the roadway, they suddenly notice something terrifying. In the distance, they notice a figure spreading its wings. As they drive by, the figure swoops down and begins following their car. In their panic, they speed up for fear that the creature will catch up to them.
What was that? We gotta get the hell out of here.
Suddenly, the creature slashed at the rooftop of the car, before mysteriously vanishing into the night. They pulled into a diner and weighed their options, ultimately deciding to contact the police and give their reports. Once their story got to the papers, it began spreading like wildfire. The papers dubbed this winged creature the Mothman. While reports vary, Mothman is reported as being a man-like creature standing 6 to 10 feet tall, with a wingspan of upwards of 20 feet. With thick black fur and reflective red eyes, he blends into the night nearly seamlessly. I've created this rendering based off of eyewitness accounts, help set the scale of just how big eyewitness reports say Mothman is. His reported ability to fly at frighteningly high speeds only adds to the panic of sighting situations. The Joyride sighting boosted the interest in the abandoned North Power Plant. The North Power Plant was an abandoned power plant and in World War II, a munitions production facility. Some investigations into the abandoned property have found the area around the plant to be extremely contaminated and highly toxic. During the height of munitions production, tens of thousands of barrels containing waste material were dumped into the nearby ponds and the surrounding wooded areas. It's thought that this contaminated wasteland was home to the Mothman, and that he took shelter in areas where it would be extremely hazardous for humans to investigate. The North Power Plant was located right next to a main road, allowing the joyriders to locate themselves momentarily before their encounter. But the Joyride sighting was only the beginning of West Virginia's encounters with the Mothman. Mary Pyrdol was a local reporter in Point Pleasant and one of the first to break the Mothman story. Within the day, she got the Joyride encounter to front page news. November 16th, 1965. Marcella Bennett, her 2-year-old daughter, and Marcella's brother and his wife were visiting relatives in Point Pleasant, who happened to live directly next to the abandoned North Power Plant. Marcella and her brother had read Mary Pyrdol's story about the previous day and joked about going hunting for such a creature during their visit. Around 9 p.m., Marcella's brother went out into the backyard. He looked up to the sky and saw a pair of lights hovering above the trees. He called Marcella to come look, who responded quite frankly with,
"I don't want to see any airplane lights."
Marcella ignored him to go bring her daughter to the car.
Hello?
Marcella had seen something she would never forget. The man-like winged creature towering over her car was just staring at her only dozens of feet away. She described the encounter as so terrified she was frozen in place.
I just stood there and looked at it, but I couldn't figure out what it was that I was seeing.
As soon as she could move again, she made a run for the house, tripping and injuring herself in the process. The family quickly locked themselves inside as the Mothman disappeared. When police arrived, after seeing Marcella's injuries from the fall, they believed her story and searched the area with guns drawn. In a later interview, she stated,
I would think I could hear the wings flapping and noise on top of the roof. I kept feeling like this thing had followed us home.
November 19th, 1967. Mary Pyrdol wakes up in a cold sweat. She calls her friend and fellow writer, John Keel.
I had a terrible nightmare. There were a lot of people drowning in the river, and Christmas packages were floating everywhere in the water. It's like something awful's going to happen.
The next day, John Keel begins talking to the locals of Point Pleasant, encountering people who have reported a similar nightmare of impending disaster. Doom is in the air, but not one person can tell where it's coming from. With consistent themes of drowning, Christmas, and great terror, the town of Point Pleasant is on high alert. December 15th, 1967, 4:45 p.m. The Silver Bridge. Crossing the Ohio River from Point Pleasant, West Virginia into the state of Ohio, the Silver Bridge was frequently used by locals several times a day. On this day, it carried nearly 100 people returning home from Christmas shopping. Later reportings of a large, man-like winged creature seen either on or near the bridge began coming into the local news stations. December 15th, 1967, 5:05 p.m. Steel pin eye bar number 13 begins to crack. The bridge begins to shake violently as the supports begin to let go, asphalt cracking under the cars. The bridge begins to collapse, and cars and their passengers are plunged into the below-freezing Ohio River. As a result of the collapse, there are reported 46 casualties and several injuries. Mary Pyrdol's nightmare had come to life. It's reported dozens of wrapped presents were found washed up on shore after the collapse. The Silver Bridge collapse is the deadliest bridge collapse in American history and led to the Department of Transportation mandating yearly bridge inspections. With a grieving town in its wake, the reports of Mothman sightings minutes before the collapse cement its presence in being an omen of doom. This is also the last report of Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, with many further reports being from all around the globe as an omen of impending doom. The Mothman story is one rich with interviews, strange twists and turns, and a lot of documentation. The development of the story from a simple encounter to an otherworldly omen of doom is a sharp turn, but not totally unreasonable. Mothman is said to have lived at the North Power Plant because of how destroyed the surrounding environment was. His story initially serves as a kind of warning to stay away from industrial and hazardous environments, and quickly turns into cementing itself deeply into the town's history. Nowadays, Mothman is looked back upon as a story of mythical encounters, with Point Pleasant hosting a Mothman festival on a yearly basis. More than 50 years later, the story of Mothman continues to live on and will be remembered through the town of Point Pleasant for years to come.